Well, welcome everyone, and we are right in the middle of our video series where we are doing video reviews of our chapter reviews from our text on Packet Tracer for CCNA. So let's get going on this example, Chapter 6 review. Chapter 6 is all about IPv4 addressing, and so sure enough, that's what we have to do in our task here. And notice this is very representative of your CCNA exam. That's right, we are going to get subnetting built right into things like simulations like this. Gone are the days where Cisco does traditional multiple choice questions in their CCNA, I believe, as far as subnetting goes. They're going to work it in kind of scenario based like this. Notice, by the way, in solving this one, I immediately kind of stretch my diagram so we can see labels and things a little better. And let's get going on our first task. Configure the IP address and subnet mask on R2, there it is, gigabit 0/0, given the address space of 172.16.10/28. Use the last usable IP address for the fourth subnet. Ensure the interface is enabled. This is so straightforward. All it requires is our knowledge of subnetting. And I take my exams now from home, which means that I don't get any kind of a whiteboard. All you are going to get is a little digital whiteboard. So notice I have this equivalent of a digital notepad for us, and it is Windows Notepad. Yeah, so this is very similar. You get a little notepad window if you test from home in the CCNA exam. So I would, in my little notepad, I would say, all right, let me make my cheat sheet for subnetting. These are the bit positions and the decimal values. There's 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, and 1. So yeah, I make this all the time, of course, to help me with any kind of subnetting questions. This is like my little cheat sheet. And here they have 28 bits. So the first 4 octets are going to be 172.17.1, and then we're going to be subnetting with that fourth octet, and we're going 4 bits into that fourth octet. If we go 4 bits deep, we know our increment number. Yeah, a lot of CCNA authors and trainers will call that a different thing. I call it my increment. So I know my subnets. I can say sub 1 in my scratch paper, 172.16, .17. I think that's why Cisco did it that way to make us have a typo. 172.16.1, and the first subnet would be .0. And that is subnet 1. Subnet 2 is going to be 17.1.16, because we saw we're going to increment by 16. Sub 3 is going to be 172.17.132. And sub 4 is going to be 172.17.1. 16 plus 32 is 48. Yay! And then finally, sub 5 is going to be 172.17.164. So you can see what I'm doing. Based on the question here, I quickly lay out the first 5 subnets in my little notepad file. This is going to be critical for me answering these questions right, at least for me, because I don't think well without some kind of a visual. So this is saying that we need the last usable IP address for the fourth subnet. Okay, well, the fifth subnet starts at 64. So the broadcast for this subnet would be 63. And then our last usable would be 62. So I can even put the solution right here for myself. So that is, what do we say, 62, the last usable on that subnet. In fact, one of the things I can do, and the exam would allow this, is you could always copy that address to the clipboard. Yeah, that's going to really help you. The other thing we need to know to solve this, by the way, is the subnet mask that we need to use. So what is the subnet mask if we have a /28? Well, if we had a /24, we know it would be 255.255.255.0. Here we have a /28, so we need to add up those four numbers from our little cheat sheet there. So 255.255.255.128 plus 64 is 192, plus 32 is 224, plus 16 is 240. So our subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.240. Notice, even though we don't have scratch paper, I love my scratch paper, but notice if you get used to working with a little notepad file like this for your notes, you're going to be practicing for the style of testing at home. That's for sure. Okay, so let's get in and get this configured on R2. So where we need to do this is on R2, and it is gigabit 0/0. So I'm going to enable. I'm going to configure terminal. I'm going to go to interface gigabit 0/0, and I'm going to say IP address. I can paste in from the clipboard the correct address that I copied from my notepad. And what was our subnet mask? Why don't I go ahead and copy that as well? Less chance for an error, certainly. So there is our IP address and subnet mask. Now I'm going to no shut. Now I'm going to end. And I can't forget, after making any kind of configuration change like this for my exam, I want to make sure I save. Okay, now one of the things that we can do here is a little bit of verification. Yeah, verification is always good. I noticed there is an R1 out there on this same segment. So let's go over to R1 and let's do a show run if we want. And that's going to show the IP address and subnet mask that is on that interface. And look at that. It does look like they are on that fourth subnet with their IP address, as you would expect. And there's confirmation that we got our subnet mask correct. Yeah, so that's kind of cool. Additional confirmation that we're on the right path here. I'm going to copy the IP address to my clipboard. I'll go back over to the R2 device, and as a final verification, I'll go ahead and ping that neighboring device. And look at that, we meet with success. So a little bit of additional verification there that we did this correct. It's always nice when we can do those additional verifications. And, you know, sometimes you can in the CCNA exam, sometimes you can't. It all depends on the scenario that you draw. Okay, well, I'm feeling great about step one. How about step two? Configure the IP address and subnet mask on R2 gigabit 0/1. All right, so we're sliding over to that interface. And we have the address of 172.17.1, again, 28. Use the first usable IP address for the third subnet. Okay, well, let me go back to my notepad file, and we are using the first usable IP for the third subnet. So the third subnet starts at 172.17.132, but that's the subnet itself. So the very next address would be 172.17.1.33. Yes, and of course, we are going to be using this same mask. So I'll go ahead and copy that to the clipboard, and I'm going to go to R2, and in R2, I'm going to the interface gigabit 0/1 this time, and we're going to say IP address. I'm going to paste in our address. I have the mask memorized at this point. It's 255.255.255.240. Here we go. And I'm going to enter that. I'm going to no shut. Notice we didn't see any status messages, so it indicates that these interfaces were already enabled. And who is our neighbor on that segment? Well, one way we could find out is, how about a show CDP neighbor command? Oh, no CDP. Wow. Wow, what a bummer. Anyways, let me go ahead and save my configuration, and let's go over to the R3 device, and over here we'll do a show IP interface brief as another way we could verify the IP. Let's copy this to the clipboard. It does appear to be an address on our subnet, by the way. So I've got that address copied to the clipboard. I can go over to the R2 device and I can do a nice ping of that address. And look at that. We met with success. More great verification that we have succeeded with the first two tasks. Step 3, be sure to save the configuration of R2 after you've verified your IP addressing. Hey, we've already done that. Thank you very much. By the way, this is something in the CCNA exam that you would most likely not see. In your tasks, there wouldn't be a reminder to save. On your initial instructions in your exam, they would say you have to save your configs to get credit, but they're not going to give you a reminder of that like we did here. I guess in Chapter 6, Ronnie and I were being very, very kind to you with the Chapter 6 review. This kind of stuff will start going away in our subsequent chapter reviews. All right, well, we're certainly not done yet. Step 4 is to configure PC1 Fast Ethernet 0 with the second to last IP address for the fourth subnet. All right, so, and then we have a default gateway and stuff we need to configure. But the first thing we need to do is, all right, let's get PC1's IP address. So it's the second to last for the fourth subnet. So subnet number 4, the last usable was 62. This is the second to last usable. So we will have 172.17.1.61. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that to the clipboard. And we know our mask. So let's go down to PC1. I was just hesitating there for a moment. You always got to make sure you're working on the right device. And yes, this is PC1. And I can do this a couple of different ways. I can go to the IP configuration app, and I can go ahead and paste in the address 172.17.1.61. We know the subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.240. And what did it want for default gateway? Configure the default gateway and DNS address with the IP address assigned to R10/0. That's the one we did earlier. That one is right here on my handy little notepad. That's great. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in for the default gateway, paste that in for the DNS server. So that's that. We are going to close that up. Notice there's no save button or anything. You just close it up. And we're obviously going to want to verify that we just did that correctly. So why don't I ping my default gateway? I think the default gateway is still on my clipboard. And look at that. We can ping our default gateway properly. So I do believe PC1 is properly configured. All right, what's next? We're all the way down to step number 5, configure PC2 with the second to last IP address for the third subnet. And then configure the default gateway, sure enough, with the IP address assigned to R3 0/0. That's over here. Okay, so PC2, second to last IP address for the third subnet. That's the first thing that we need to do. All right, so I'm going to come back over to my notepad. There's our third subnet, and the second to last for the third subnet, that would be 172.17.1, and then we have to look at 48, so that's the beginning of the fourth subnet. The broadcast would be 47, so we have 46 as the last usable. This is the second to last, so it would be 45. So this is going to be .45, and there is the IP address that we need. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and we're going to go put it into PC2, Fast Ethernet 0. All right, so desktop, IP configuration. Let me do a paste. Let me do our subnet mask 255.255.255.0. And they want the default gateway and DNS for the IP address assigned to R3 gig 0/0. So let me go grab that. That is this number right here. I will copy that to the clipboard, and we're going to go back into our PC0 and do some pasting. Yeah, you'll want to take advantage of the clipboard, obviously, whenever possible. That's going to increase your accuracy of things. And let's go in there and let's do a ping verification. I'm going to ping and paste in the default gateway that we need to ping. That looks terrific. All right, so we have done step 5. We've configured PC2. Remember to check your results using the button below, and I do believe we are ready to check our results, aren't we? So I'm going to go ahead and double on each hand. I'm going to cross fingers, and I'm going to check my results. Oh, and look at that. We have some assessment item that we have missed. And it looks like it is the subnet. Well, the first thing I see wrong is our subnet mask on PC2 Fast Ethernet 0. Wow, PC2 Fast Ethernet 0 subnet mask incorrect. All right, I'm going to close up the grading engine there. Go to PC2 IP configuration and look at that. You all saw me do it. I input the wrong wrong subnet mask. Wow. Didn't even notice it when I did it. So moving too fast, can it cost you? Yes, big time. Now, would I have gotten partial credit in the exam? Yes, I would have. I would have gotten partial credit in the CCNA exam, thank goodness, but that's still not a good thing. Okay, what else was wrong? Well, let me just check my results again and go back to my assessment items. The PC2 situation is corrected. It's the PC1 default gateway and DNS. All right, interesting. So let me close this up and let me resize this again so that we can kind of see this on the same screen as, see our instructions on the same screen as our configuration, obviously. And I've got more that I've got to debug. I did not plan, by the way, to make mistakes in this chapter review, but I'm glad I did, right? Because many of you are going, yeah, this is the exact thing that happens to me, Anthony, and let's see you troubleshoot it. Okay, so PC1, and it is not liking the DNS or the DNS address or the default gateway address. So what did I do wrong? Let's go in and take a look at our IP configuration. So I gave it 172.17.162, and it is supposed to be, where am I? PC1, right here. It's supposed to be the IP address assigned to R1 gigabit 0/0. R1 0/0. Oh, I copied the wrong address from our little notepad. That's right. What I should have done is I should have gone in and done a show IP interface brief, for example, and look at that. There is the IP address that is supposed to be the default gateway and the DNS. So I'm going to go into PC1, IP configuration. I'm going to highlight that and paste the correct number, highlight that and paste the correct number, and then close this window up, and we are going to check our results, and thank goodness we completed this activity. Boy, oh boy. I and Ronnie Wong, I authored this activity with Ronnie, and you just saw me getting points incorrectly. And why did that happen to me? I was trying to move much too quickly. So you might hear me sometimes say in my training classes, folks, we have to slow down in order to speed up. And this was a perfect example of that. I needed to go a little slower, go a little more carefully in order to make sure I didn't needlessly lose any points in this relatively straightforward IPv4 addressing simulation. Well, thank you so much for joining me, everybody. I'll try and do better in the next one, and I'll see you there.